President Cyril Ramaphosa has ordered the deployment of nearly 3,000 troops to the Democratic Republic of Congo. The South African National Defence Force will provide support in the fight against the armed groups in the eastern parts of the DRC. The deployment will cover the period of the 15th of December 2023 until December this year. The deployment, which is part of South Africa's obligation towards the Southern African Development Community's mission, will set back the country around 2 billion rand. However, government says the cost will not have an impact on the Defence Force's regular maintenance and emergency repairs. For more on this story, we now speak to DA MP Kobus Marais, who's also the Shadow Minister of Defence for the Democratic Alliance. Kobus, good morning. Thank you so much for making time for us. What do you make of this decision, also taking into consideration that it was the DRC that said that MONUSCO must pull out?
Yes, it obviously brings in a lot of questions. I mean, I've heard about these rumors, and I've always said, what is basically motivating this? And it's very difficult to judge that. As you have said, the UN has been or is busy withdrawing from the DRC, and there are very good reasons. Both the DRC, the Eastern African Community, as well as the African Union must take responsibility for what is happening in the Eastern DRC. Remember, this is basically a conflict between neighbors. Now, if they cannot, in the Eastern African bloc, cultivate a cooperation between them, then why South Africa? We are definitely in the southern point. We are not one of the neighboring countries. We are not in the Eastern African Community bloc. And one asked the question, how will we fund this? Remember, in the past, our budgeted expenses was about R1 billion a year, and we got refunded from the United Nations between 450 and 750 million rand. And even with that, we have struggled to maintain our aircraft and our equipment and the logistical support to those soldiers. We know the dilapidated state of the Defence Force. So 2 billion rand, 2,900 soldiers, which is a much larger contingent than we've ever had under the United Nations. So what is driving this, and why is the President and the ANC so adamant to basically driving the Air Force's defence capability down to the extent that one is really questioning the judgmental reason in this, and it doesn't make sense. And I just want to make mention, remember, in terms of the Constitution, the President is obliged to inform Parliament within 7 days if it's in session, and if it's not in session, within a reasonable time. Now, we've had this debate and this conflict with the President in the past, and we have been called to a special meeting even during when we were in recession, in recess. And there's no reason for not informing Parliament and briefing us, because we know we haven't got the money. And if money is now suddenly coming from somewhere, one will ask the question, so what about our other priorities? Our Air Force, our Navy. Remember, in the DRC, we only have got one Oryx helicopter, and we know what happened with the other one the other day, because there are no air support. The Roy Falk is on the ground, and they are coming back to South Africa. And it seems like with 2,900 soldiers, our original 5 Oryx helicopters will be downgraded to only 2. So it asks the question, how are we going to support our soldiers? Also logistically, we don't want our soldiers coming back in body bags.
Yeah, and here's the other thing about this decision also, is that in December there were elections that were taking place in the DRC, disputed outcomes, of course, in those elections. We also know that President Felix Tshisekedi has accused Kenya of arming these militants, and the M23 as well has been accused, or rather Rwanda has also been accused of arming the M23. What does this do to understanding how South Africa finds itself in this geopolitical mess that is playing out in the Eastern African parts of the country? Also, we were with MONUSCO.
Yes, we have been with MONUSCO for the last 20 years. And if those countries cannot look after their own safety and security, it means that we will be there until the end of days. While we in South Africa, we can't protect our own borders, we can't get our prime mission equipment in a capable state that they can defend South Africa. We know that we have got more than 85% of all air platforms being grounded at the moment, and only one frigate and the two new multi-mission inshore patrol vessels in the Navy. So it really asks the questions, what is the priority of government? Is the priority not supposed to be first looking at our own situation, making sure that we protect the integrity of our country, we assure the safety of our own people, we make sure that our own borders, land and maritime borders and air, are well protected and well resourced before we trying to play Father Christmas to other nations. Yes, Cabo Delgado makes sense because it's a neighboring state, but we've got no direct or sufficient indirect justifications to be in the DRC until the end of days. They will have to take responsibility, and what the president seems to be doing is trying to buy favor with those African nations by basically putting our own soldiers there at the expense of South Africa.
And then, of course, as you raised a bit earlier on, the issue around budgets. We know the austerity measures that have been implemented by government. And last year, the Minister of Finance saying that 51.1 billion will be allocated to the Defense Department. But that amount is said to actually decrease this year.
Correct. And that was the indications. Remember, during the mid-year budgets, the amendment budget, the only money that was given to the Defence Force was the money that was received from the United Nations. So that should come back to the Defence Force. However, if you look at what is happening with the cost of employees, that will probably be overspent by about 3 billion rand. So, and in the same time, we haven't got the money to make sure that our own prime mission equipment are serviced, are maintained, are upgraded or replaced. We haven't got the money, and suddenly they found justification to spend 2 billion rand a year. That must come from the bottom line of the budget. If, for instance, the National Treasury agrees to more money, then one still questions their priorities. Why the DRC is a higher priority than the safety and protection of our own borders. That doesn't make sense, and it looks like the president and the ANC is running this defense force down so fast that it's got no defense capability left with the elections coming up.
As the main opposition, what's your next move, considering that you say that the president hasn't informed the parliament as yet?
Well, obviously, I've already liaised with the Portfolio Committee and the Joint Standing Committee on Defence so that we can urgently get those letters. That was now published in the media. The President will not come and brief us. It will be the Chief of Joint Operations that will come. I doubt whether the Minister will be there. So obviously that we can ask the questions. And then, if need be, we need to expose how they are risking South Africa and our own soldiers that will probably now coming back in body bags, or some of them, and in the run-up to the election, I don't want to make politics of the Defence Force, but really it seems like they are running the Defence Force down so much so that we can only expose that to the public, because whenever we will need the Defence Force in South Africa and our own borders, we must know that we haven't got the resources. We haven't got the capabilities to defend our own nation. And one must really go and look and see, why is the DRC, the Eastern DRC, of such a high importance, a priority for the ANC government? And, whether there are personal interest, one will have to look and see to that. And if need be, we will go to the public protector again and ask for her investigation and whether this was not a negating of the president's constitutional obligations.
Yeah. Let's now speak about, so you have this decision that is taken that you're going to have the 2,900 soldiers being deployed in the eastern parts of the DRC. We know South Africa's own frosty relationship with Rwanda. We know what happened even with Cabo Delgado, where the president in Mozambique had said that instead of taking troops within the SADC region, decided to take troops that are coming from Rwanda. What does this mean for the relationship between South Africa as well as Rwanda?
Well, we know from own experience and interactions with the African nations, especially in SADC, that the ANC government in South Africa is not as popular as we think. They experience us as being arrogant. There's clearly no very good relationships even with Mozambique. And for some other reason, it seems like the ANC is buying favor with other nations. And clearly this is not in the best interest of South Africa, nor in the interest of SADC. Clearly in the Cabo Delgado, both Rwanda, Burundi, Tanzania and us are involved there, and we are supposed to be on the same side. But in the DRC, we are in opposition, in conflicting, against each other. And clearly, that's why I'm emphasizing that the African Union and the East African Communion bloc must take responsibility. Why must SADC do that? And predominantly South Africa, which is the furthest away from those countries. And I cannot see, and I haven't been provided with any information to convince me that this is in our own interest to be in Cabo Delgado. I mean, where is Zimbabwe? Where is Zambia? Where are the other nations that is supposed to be more impacted by this? And so why must we be there? It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah. What happened to the African Standby Force?
Well, obviously we are committed to that African Standby Force, and we are complying with that each and every year. Remember, the Standby Force is wherever it is so critical that the impact of such a threat is so severe on Africa that it will have a direct impact on South Africa. So we are very much committed to regional stability. There's no problem with that. However, when we look at regional stability, we must first look South Africa immediately, next to South Africa, which is the SADC countries, which is important. And we are committed as the DA that we must be involved in regional stability. But once you go further, and then South Africa must be the Father Christmas, then one must really ask why. What is the interest that South Africa has got in the Eastern DRC? Is it mining rights? Is it personal interest? Or is it just buying favor from those African presidents, like with the DRC and some of the other countries? There's no logic, and from even a foreign relations point of view, one asks the question, so what will we gain by being there? Because remember, we're doing it at the expense of South Africa, our own safety and security, our own citizens, and our own priorities. So what are these interests? And it seems like the government, the president, is not honest with us, is not transparent with us, and I hope it's not, a flickering of his imagination again, that is motivating him to commit South Africa to such a war, where we know that we haven't got the air support. We know that those Rwanda is coming back to South Africa. We know that there's only one Oryx. So in other words, where is the air support, critical air support for those soldiers will be coming from?
Thank you
Nowhere.
so much. Thank you so much for your time. Kobus Marais is a member of Parliament and also the DA's Shadow Minister of Defense. Just a reminder what President Cyril Ramaphosa said last year when President Felix Tshisekedi was in the country. He said, the Democratic Republic of Congo is the beating heart of Africa and is a country of immense importance to the history of our continent. So clear where the sentiments are around why South Africa is sending down the 2,900 troops to the eastern part of the DRC, where the conflict has been ongoing.